Are we truly alone in the universe? Today we cover some of the scariest encounters with unidentified flying objects and possible evidence of life beyond our planet. From mysterious sightings to groundbreaking missions, today we explore possible evidence of extraterrestrial life that will blow your mind. At the time of this recording, NASA has just launched a craft the other day set to head to Jupiter's moon to discover if life exists there. On October 14th, NASA launched the Europa Clipper spacecraft on a mission to explore Jupiter's moon, Europa, which scientists believe might have conditions suitable for life. The spacecraft lifted off from Kennedy Space Center in Florida on a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket. This mission aims to investigate Europa's subsurface ocean, hidden beneath an ice shell that could be up to 25 kilometers thick. Europa is about a quarter of the size of Earth, but it's believed to contain twice as much water as all of Earth's oceans combined. This makes it one of the most promising locations for finding potential life out in space, at least that we know of. The Europa Clipper is the largest spacecraft ever built for a planetary mission. It's about 100 feet long, equipped with 9 scientific instruments designed to measure the internal ocean and analyze the composition of the moon's surface. The spacecraft will conduct 49 close flybys of Europa starting in 2031, getting as close as 15.5 miles to the surface. So unfortunately, we do have quite a while to wait before we hear anything, but the fact that NASA is actively seeking out life on a distant moon is pretty cool. Fingers crossed they find something. Just last year, NASA released a highly anticipated 36-page report on UFOs or UAPs, and there were some interesting takeaways. They looked into hundreds of sightings but concluded that they didn't find any solid evidence that aliens were behind any of them. Still, they didn't completely rule out the possibility either. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson made it clear that the agency is stepping up its game in researching these mysterious encounters. He said they'll be using better tech and artificial intelligence to dig deeper into them. The report is pretty technical, but one key takeaway is that it stated there is no reason to conclude extraterrestrial sources are responsible for these sightings. But the report also didn't deny the possibility of, quote, potential unknown alien technology operating in Earth's atmosphere. So that's pretty cool. Nicola Fox, who's part of NASA's Science Mission Directorate, said UAPs are still one of our planet's biggest mysteries. The challenge? A lot of the data they have just isn't good enough to draw any solid conclusions about what these sightings really are. To tackle this, NASA brought in a new director of UAP research, but they're keeping their identity a secret. This person will build a database to track and analyze future sightings, and using AI and machine learning. It's a smart move, especially since Dr. Daniel Evans mentioned that some members of the UAP panel had faced, quote, actual threats, which is unsettling. So keeping the new director's identity hidden is really about protecting their safety. The Falcon Lake incident began on May 20th, 1967 in Falcon Lake, Manitoba, Canada. This event has often been called Canada's best documented UFO case, and for good reason. It all started with Stephen McCallick, an industrial mechanic and amateur geologist. He was exploring the area in search of precious metals when he suddenly heard a commotion from a flock of geese, and he looked up to see 2 strange objects hovering about 150 feet away, which he described as cigarette-shaped things with humps in the middle, glowing with a reddish hue. One of the crafts then landed on a nearby rocky platform, transforming into a shiny disc that looked like, quote, hot stainless steel. McCallick sketched the craft for about a half an hour before deciding that he wanted to get a closer look. As he approached, he noticed it was completely smooth, but the craft had an open door where he could hear muffled voices. Then he reached out and touched the craft, which was so hot it melted the fingertips of his gloves. As he turned to leave, understandably, a panel then opened up, releasing a blast of heated gas that knocked him back, setting his clothes on fire. McCallick barely managed to escape, feeling nauseous and disoriented. He was so sick he was unable to eat solid food in the days following the incident, and was treated for burns that doctors said resembled radiation injuries. His story caught the attention of the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Air Force, and even US authorities. And when they reached the site that McCallick said he spotted the craft, authorities found a 15-foot ring of burnt vegetation, and there were highly radioactive elements found in soil samples and in the clothing McCallick had been wearing on the day of the encounter, which he had to rip off because they were on fire. And there was also superheated metal that had melted into the cracks of rocks, also highly radioactive. Till this day, the case has not been explained. This incident is referred to as South Africa's Roswell, the Kalahari crash. Kind of tells you how significant this one was. So the story goes that this whole incident was covered up. Some of the details of this one are a bit vague, and some chalk this up to being a hoax, but there were supposed leaked documents describing the following events. So this was an unusual event that took place over the Indian Ocean on May 7th, 1989. According to reports, a fast-moving object believed to be a UFO was spotted by naval personnel. In response, fighter jets were sent to intercept and target it. The UFO was successfully hit and crashed in the Kalahari Desert, leaving a noticeable skid mark. Shortly after the crash, a U.S. recovery team was swiftly deployed to gather evidence from the site and transport it to Patterson Air Force Base. And not only were parts of the aircraft retrieved, but the bodies of 2 alien beings as well. The Tic Tac UFO incident is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence in the world of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. On November 14th of 2004, retired Navy Commander David Fravor, a pilot with the USS Nimitz, had an encounter during a training exercise off the coast of Southern California. Fravor was flying with Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich when they were directed to investigate an unusual radar signal detected by the USS Princeton, another ship in their strike group. The radar operators had spotted, quote, multiple anomalous aerial vehicles that descended from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second. Fravor and Dietrich diverted to get a closer look, and as they approached, Fravor described seeing a small white object that looked almost like a tic tac, hovering above the ocean waves. He recalled in a 2021 interview that the object seemed to respond to their movements, as if it was aware that they were there. The Tic Tac was about the size of Fravor's jet, but had no visible markings, no wings or exhaust plumes. He attempted to cut it off, but the object accelerated away so quickly that it vanished from sight, only to be detected 60 miles away in less than a minute. Fravor stated, "I think what we experienced was well beyond the material science and the capabilities that we had at the time, that we have currently, or that we're going to have in the next 10 to 20 years. This incident came out in a report revealing over 500 sightings since 2004, some of which, including this one, are still unexplained. The Kecksburg incident took place on December 9th, 1965, and it's often referred to as Pennsylvania's Roswell. On that evening, a bright fireball was spotted across 6 US states and even parts of Canada, particularly over Detroit and Windsor. Witnesses reported seeing a large object streak through the sky, creating sonic booms and even causing some grass fires in Michigan and northern Ohio. In Kecksburg, about 30 miles southeast of Pittsburgh, locals described hearing a thump and seeing blue smoke. The US Army and state police sealed off the area where the object was believed to have landed, but when search teams arrived, they apparently found nothing. Authorities claimed that it was likely just a meteor, but decades later in 2005, NASA released a statement saying that fragments from the area had been analyzed and came from a Soviet satellite. They also said that the records detailing this had been lost in 1987. The whole thing just felt very fishy. Was the object an extraterrestrial craft, debris from a Soviet space probe, a military satellite? Till this day, we still don't know. On June 21st, 1947, Harold Dahl, a harbor patrolman, claimed he saw 6 donut-shaped craft hovering over Maury Island, Washington. According to Dahl, one of these craft began releasing debris that resembled light metal, which he said caused injuries to his dog and a crew member. A man named Kenneth Arnold heard about the story, and having just recently reported seeing unidentified flying objects himself, he was pretty interested in the case. Arnold interviewed Dahl and his fellow crew member Fred Chrisman. They showed him fragments of what they said came from this UFO. The US Air Force flew in to investigate, but then their plane mysteriously crashed, killing both the officers inside. Then the FBI concluded that the sighting had been a hoax. Dahl himself allegedly told investigators that if questioned, he would claim it was all made up to avoid any trouble. Edward Ruppelt, the head of Project Blue Book, later characterized the Maury Island incident as the dirtiest hoax in UFO history. But was it just a hoax? Some think that the hoax explanation may have been a cover-up to distract from something bigger, like military operations or technology that the government wanted to keep secret. On the night of March 24, 1967, something happened at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. Robert Salas, a then 26-year-old U.S. Air Force lieutenant, was in a secure underground launch control center overseeing 10 Minutemen intercontinental ballistic missiles when everything went dark. Just before the missile systems failed, a security officer on the surface frantically called Salas, saying that there was a glowing oval-shaped object hovering above the base. Apparently the object exhibited strange movements. It had stopped suddenly and made sharp turns that no aircraft at the time would have been capable of making. Salas felt that they were under attack, but not by any known threat. I mean, what type of technology could have disabled the missiles? Within 10 seconds, all 10 missiles had just disabled at the same time. This had never happened before. After the incident, Salas was instructed not to discuss what happened and signed a non-disclosure agreement. For decades he kept quiet, but in the mid-90s he started sharing this story. He later discovered that just 8 days prior to his experience, another similar incident had occurred at Minnow Air Force Base in North Dakota, where 10 more missiles were disabled. Salas estimates that within a 6-month span, a total of 30 nuclear missiles were affected. Official Air Force documents declassified in 1996 confirmed these events at Malmstrom. One of the most talked about topics in recent years is the Navy's released UFO videos. In December of 2017, the New York Times revealed 3 videos recorded by US Navy pilots that were encounters with mysterious flying objects. The videos, named FLIR-1, Gimbal, and Go Fast, were filmed during training exercises off the coast of San Diego and East Coast. The footage showed UAPs moving at incredible speeds, performing all these maneuvers that didn't look like any known aircraft. The objects appeared to be flying against the wind, changing direction instantly, and looked to have no visible propulsion. The Navy pilots used advanced infrared cameras capturing the heat signatures of these objects. In the gimbal video, you can even hear how amazed and shocked the pilots are. In 2019, the Pentagon officially released these videos, confirming they were authentic, and stated that they were part of a larger program to investigate UAPs. The US Department of Defense established the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force to assess these encounters and any potential threats they might pose to national security. What's fascinating is that some military personnel, including former Navy pilot David Fravor, have come forward describing their experiences with these UAPs, saying that these encounters are still unexplained. The Belgian UFO wave spanned from November of 1989 to April of 1990. It all started on November 29th, 1989, with reports of large, triangular objects flying at low altitudes across Belgium. A lot of the witnesses described these crafts as having lights underneath. On the night of March 30th to the 31st of 1990, the Control Reporting Center in the village of Glons received reports of unusual lights moving through the sky. In response, 2 fighter jets were sent to investigate. The pilots were able to get radar locks on targets, but they reported seeing nothing unusual. Over the following weeks, 143 people or so reported seeing something in the sky that night, but all these accounts came in after the fact. Eyewitnesses claimed to see 4 lights in a square formation, making erratic movements before disappearing. Some believe the Belgian UFO wave case was a genuine UFO. Others think that this could be a case of mass hysteria, but what do you all think?
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Thule Papyrus. Back in 1480 BC, ancient Egypt was reportedly abuzz with tales of mysterious phenomena lighting up the night sky. One such account revolves around the elusive Thule Papyrus, which some say describes sightings of, quote, circles of fire soaring above the pharaoh's realm. These fiery discs have been interpreted by some modern enthusiasts as potential UFOs visiting Earth thousands of years ago. The intrigue only deepens knowing that the original papyrus has been lost, with only copies and second-hand reports to hint at its contents. The missing piece of history leaves us wondering, did ancient Egyptians witness something truly out of this world, or is it all just a misinterpretation of celestial events? In our number 9 spot today, we have the Vimanis in ancient Indian epics. Ancient Indian epics are packed with stories of gods and heroes navigating the skies in incredible flying machines called Vimanas. These aren't just chariots pulled by mystical creatures, they're described with details that sound remarkably technical. Some texts talk about them being made of light, equipped with deadly weapons, and capable of traveling vast distances, even between planets. This level of specificity has led some modern theorists to wonder if these accounts are more than myth. Could they be ancient records of advanced technology, or even encounters with extraterrestrial beings? While most scholars view them as symbolic tales reflecting the imagination and spirituality of the time, the detailed descriptions definitely leave a tantalizing question. Were the ancient authors trying to document something that they actually witnessed? The idea that these epic stories might hint at unsolved alien encounters is definitely an interesting twist on ancient history. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Anunnaki of Sumerian mythology. Deep in ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians wove tales of the Anunnaki, majestic beings who descended from the skies and played pivotal roles in shaping human destiny. These weren't mere mythical figures shrouded in abstract symbolism. The legends portray them with astonishing detail, attributing advanced knowledge and technologies to these sky-born visitors. Some modern theorists are captivated by the possibility that the Anunnaki were actually extraterrestrials who jump-started human civilization. They point to Sumerian artifacts and writings that hint at sophisticated understanding of astronomy and mathematics, questioning how such advanced concepts emerged seemingly out of nowhere. Mainstream historians often interpret the Anunnaki as symbolic deities, reflecting the Sumerians' rich spiritual beliefs, yet the specificity and grandeur of these stories leaves us pondering, could there be more to these ancient accounts than mere mythology? The mystery of the Anunnaki definitely keeps the mystery of possible ancient alien encounters very much alive. In our number 7 spot today, we are talking about Ezekiel's vision in the Hebrew Bible. In the ancient narrative of the Hebrew Bible, the prophet Ezekiel delivers a vision that's nothing short of mind-bending. He details a flying chariot descending from the sky, composed of, quote, wheels within wheels that gleam with otherworldly light. Accompanying this celestial vehicle are beings, each sporting multiple faces and wings. A description that sounds eerily like something out of a science fiction novel. This has led some modern theorists to wonder, was Ezekiel witnessing an advanced spacecraft, perhaps piloted by extraterrestrial visitors? The specificity of his account, the intricate mechanics of the wheels, the dazzling lights, the surreal beings, it definitely all sparks curiosity about whether this was more than just a prophetic dream. While religious scholars typically interpret Ezekiel's vision as symbolic or metaphorical, the idea that he might have recorded an ancient alien encounter adds an exhilarating layer to the text. Could this be one of humanity's earliest glimpses into the cosmos and its possible inhabitants? What do you think Ezekiel might have truly seen? In our number 6 spot today, we have the Dogon tribe's knowledge of Sirius B. Tucked away in the remote regions of Mali, the Dogon tribe has a tradition that has baffled outsiders for decades. They possess intricate knowledge about the Sirius star system, particularly Sirius B, a white dwarf companion that's invisible to the naked eye and wasn't confirmed by Western astronomers until the 19th century. According to Dogon lore, they have known about this hidden star for centuries, detailing its orbit and even describing it as small and incredibly heavy. This astonishing level of astronomical insight has led some to speculate that they may have been visited by extraterrestrial beings who shared cosmic secrets with them. Could their ancient stories be evidence of contact with visitors from another world? Skeptics argue that this knowledge might have been introduced by modern interactions with outsiders or misinterpreted by researchers, yet Yet, the question still remains. How did an isolated tribe come to possess such advanced understanding of a celestial body that is so elusive? Even today, the mystery of the Dogon's connection to Sirius B continues to intrigue and just completely mystify. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Lolodov Plate. Unearthed in the mysterious terrains of Nepal, the Lolodov Plate stands as one of the most interesting artifacts that stirs debates about ancient alien encounters. This intriguing stone disc features a captivating spiral design, but what truly sets it apart is the figure etched onto it, remarkably resembling a modern depiction of a gray alien. The striking similarity has led some to speculate that this artifact is tangible evidence of extraterrestrial visitors interacting with ancient civilizations. I mean, how else could such a precise image of an alien-like being appear on a relic purportedly thousands of years old? Skeptics, however, highlight the glaring lack of provenance and verifiable documentation surrounding the plate. Many argue that without concrete evidence of its origin or discovery, the Lolodov Plate could very well be a modern forgery crafted to ignite imaginations. Yet, despite the controversies, the plate continues to captivate those fascinated by the possibility of unsolved alien encounters from ancient times. It serves as a puzzle piece in the larger quest to uncover whether humanity's history might be interwoven with visitors from beyond our world. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Tassili Najir cave art. Deep in the heart of Algeria's Sahara Desert lies Tassili Najir, a plateau home to some of the most intriguing ancient rock art ever discovered. Dating back over 12,000 years, these cave paintings aren't just your typical depictions of hunters and animals. Among them are figures with large, round heads and slender, almost ethereal bodies that don't quite fit with the rest of the artwork. These peculiar beings have sparked intense debate and fascination. Could this really be evidence of ancient humans encountering visitors from another world? Some enthusiasts argue that the sheer number and consistency of these odd figures across different sites suggests something more than just artistic imagination. While archaeologists often interpret them as symbolic representations of shamans or deities within early human rituals, the unique characteristics definitely leaves us wondering, why did these ancient artists choose to portray certain figures so differently? The mystery of the Tassili Najir cave art continues to captivate, blurring the lines between history and speculation, and keeping alive the possibility of unsolved alien encounters from ancient times. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Drapa stones. Back in the 1930s, rumors began swirling about a startling discovery in the remote mountains along the China-Tibet border, the Drapa stones. According to the tale, archaeologists stumbled upon a series of ancient caves filled with bizarre stone discs. Each disc was said to be about a foot in diameter, with a perfect hole in the center and tiny hieroglyphic-like markings etched in a spiral pattern toward the middle. Some accounts even claim that these inscriptions, once decoded, told an incredible story of a spacecraft that crash-landed on Earth around 12,000 years ago. The surviving occupants, known as the Drapa, were unable to repair their ship and had to adapt to life on our planet. The idea that these stones could be a record of ancient alien visitors is definitely nothing short of thrilling. However, the plot thickens as there is a glaring lack of physical evidence. No verified stones, no credible photographs, and no reliable documentation of this supposed archaeological expedition. Many historians and researchers have dismissed the Drapa stones as an elaborate hoax or modern myth, yet the legend still persists, captivating the imagination of those who wonder if there might be a kernel of truth buried in this very mysterious story. Are the Drapa stones a lost key to understanding ancient extraterrestrial contact, or simply a fascinating yarn spun to intrigue and entertain? In our number 2 spot today, we have the Piri Reis map. In 1513, the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis crafted a map that has become one of history's strangest artifacts. The Piri Reis map remarkably details parts of the Americas and, intriguingly, features what some interpret as the coastline of Antarctica, centuries before its official discovery in 1820. What's more baffling is that the map appears to depict this mysterious continent without its its ice cover, suggesting knowledge of its landscape as it might have looked thousands of years ago. This has ignited theories that Piri Reis had access to ancient sources from lost civilizations, or even extraterrestrial beings who shared advanced geographical insights. Critics argue that the map's accuracy is overestimated and likely stems from compiling existing charts from explorers of the time, like Columbus and others. Yet the question lingers: how did a 16th century admiral map regions supposedly unknown to his contemporaries with such precision? And finally, to end off our list today, we are talking about the Nazca Lines of Peru. Deep in the arid desert of southern Peru stretch the mysterious Nazca Lines, massive geoglyphs etched into the earth over 2,000 years ago. These enormous designs feature intricate depictions of animals like hummingbirds, monkeys, and spiders, as well as geometric shapes that span hundreds of feet. What's mind-boggling is that these figures are only fully visible from the air, leaving us to wonder how and why an ancient civilization, without known aerial capabilities, created them. This has led some to speculate that the Nazca Lines were made as signals or messages to extraterrestrial beings hovering above. Could the Nazca people have been trying to communicate with visitors from another world, or even guided by them in crafting these colossal artworks? While archaeologists often suggest that they had astronomical or ceremonial purposes, the true intention behind the Nazca Lines remains one of history's most captivating, unsolved mysteries.
On July 11th, 1991, Mexico City experienced a total solar eclipse, but as the sky darkened, people down below saw something they'd never been expecting to see. Guillermo Aragon, a television executive, was filming the eclipse from his rooftop when he noticed a strange object hovering above. His footage caught the attention of Jaime Maussan, a well-known Mexican journalist. He described his reaction saying, "When I saw it, I said, oh my god, this is a UFO, a real UFO." 8 days later, Maussan aired the footage in a special broadcast. The response was overwhelming, with the network receiving 40,000 calls at once. Viewers began sending in their own videos too, and at least 7 showed similar objects in the sky. One 19-year-old student named Eric Aguilar described seeing a white dot that transformed into a larger, shining object. Meanwhile, 60 miles away, businessman Luis Lara captured another video of a metallic object. Maussan noted that many of these reports and videos were very similar. It looked like people had spotted the same UFO at different locations. 2 months later, engineer Vicente Sanchez recorded another shiny object during a military air show, describing its undulating movement, and a year after that, a similar object appeared at the same air show, moving against the wind. Since that eclipse, Mexico has just seen thousands of UFO sightings, like this next one. Another one of the most fascinating UFO sightings in Mexico took place on March 5th of 2004, when Mexican Air Force pilots came across a series of mysterious glowing objects over southern Campeche state. They spotted a total of 11 unidentified flying objects and quickly started filming them as they hovered around in their jet. The footage goes on for a long time. You get to see these things clearly gliding across the sky at high speed in this organized formation. This was definitely not your typical flash in the sky kind of sighting. The pilots attempted to follow the objects, but they eventually vanished from sight. Project Sign was an official U.S. government study on UFOs initiated by the United States Air Force in 1948. The project was an early attempt to investigate the growing number of unidentified flying object sightings following World War II. Project Sign was established under Air Force General Nathan Twining, head of the Air Technical Service Command. Its primary goal was to collect and evaluate all available information on UFO sightings. There was a lot of paranoia surrounding UFOs at this time. This was right after World War II, and many thought that these mysterious objects could pose a real risk. On April 27, 1949, the Air Force released a report summarizing what they'd gathered so far. The document indicated that some UFOs seemed to be genuine aircraft, but that there wasn't enough evidence to determine their origin. Most sightings were explained as misidentified objects though, but the report did call for an ongoing investigation. Retired Air Force Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt later claimed in his 1956 book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, that Project Sign had produced an estimate of the situation, suggesting an extraterrestrial origin for these UFOs. But General Hoyt Vandenberg, the Chief of Staff at the Air Force, ended up shutting down the project because of a lack of any proof. Following Project Sign, there was Project Grudge, which took a much more skeptical stance on UFOs. This project just outright dismissed reports as misidentifications, mass hysteria, or hoaxes. It seemed like they had a very clear agenda to discredit witnesses and make the idea of unidentified flying objects and aliens just seem silly to the public. Before Project Sign, there was Majestic 12, or MJ-12, a secretive group that supposedly formed to investigate the Roswell incident in 1947. Allegedly, this group consisted of 12 scientists, military officials, and politicians tasked with examining the alien spacecraft that reportedly crashed in New Mexico. Eyewitnesses claimed the craft carried extraterrestrials, prompting the need for a covert operation that would later lead to the establishment of Area 51. But back to Roswell for a moment. At first, the military actually announced they recovered a flying disc, but they quickly changed their tune, saying it was just a weather balloon. This inconsistency seemed highly suspect, especially as witnesses like rancher Mac Brazel described strange debris and strange-looking, almost non-human bodies being recovered from the scene. Now, interest in MJ-12 began in the late 70s when a letter allegedly from President Truman was leaked, authorizing the creation of this secret organization. Some documents were later found that referenced MJ-12, though the government insists these are fake. But two classified documents in the National Archives do mention MJ-12. Some believe that MJ-12 used advanced alien technology to influence human thoughts or even erase people's memories. It's also believed that MJ-12 was involved in overseeing alien abductions, allowing extraterrestrials to abduct people in exchange for advanced tech, which they reverse engineer at Area 51, which houses alien crafts and possibly even aliens themselves. Project Blue Book was a U.S. Air Force program that investigated UFO sightings from 1952 to 1969. It followed earlier programs, Project Sign and Project Grudge, but Blue Book became the most comprehensive effort to study UFOs. Project Blue Book collected over 12,000 UFO reports. Of these, about 700 stayed classified as unexplained after investigation. The project focused on two main questions. Were UFOs a threat to national security? And were they actually of extraterrestrial origin? The answers to these questions were made less clear to the public than the public would have hoped. One of the most interesting cases investigated by Blue Book was the 1966 Michigan UFO sightings, where a number of people, including police officers, reported seeing strange lights in the sky. The Air Force dismissed the reports at first, but people were so adamant about what they saw that they were forced to reevaluate the incident. In 1967, a panel of scientists reviewed the evidence and ultimately deemed the sightings, quote, not entirely explainable. By the late 60s, the Air Force began to wind down Project Blue Book, saying they just hadn't gathered enough evidence for extraterrestrial life. The project officially ended in December of 1969, with the Air Force releasing a final report that concluded UFOs did not pose a threat and that most sightings could be attributed to misidentified aircraft, balloons, or astronomical phenomena. The 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident, often referred to as the Washington Flap, is one of the craziest UFO reports in history. Over 2 weekends in July of that year, people in the capital began reporting a series of strange sightings in the sky. On the night of July 19th, radar operators at Washington National Airport picked up a cluster of unknown objects flying at incredible speeds. Ground witnesses described seeing bright lights darting around erratically. The following night, the sightings continued, and the U.S. Air Force sent up fighter jets to chase the mysterious objects. Pilots in the jets reported seeing glowing lights that seemed to defy the laws of physics, making sudden accelerations and sharp turns that no conventional aircraft could replicate. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Richard French was an investigator for Project Blue Book in the 50s. In 2013, during a citizen hearing on disclosure, he told a pretty wild story. While working for Project Blue Book, his job had often just involved debunking UFO sightings, but there was one incident that he had no explanation for. French recounted an incident had happened while he was investigating off the coast of St. John's, Newfoundland. Reports had come in about two mysterious aircraft that supposedly crashed in the water. French followed a group of around 100 onlookers gathered on a nearby wharf. What he saw next was something he'd never be able to forget. He described encountering 2 to 3 foot tall beings that were thin and gray, seemingly working on their damaged crafts in the water. French and the onlookers watched as these strange beings repaired their vessels right before his eyes. Then the craft lifted out of the water and shot off into the sky. He never included this sighting in his official reports at the time, probably fearing he'd be laughed out of his job. The Indian Ocean has a long history of mysterious sightings, with reports of strange underwater objects dating back as far as 1873. A number of sailors have described encounters with these massive, mile-wide discs lurking beneath the surface of the water, sometimes accompanied by eerie lights. One of the earliest documented sightings occurred on March 23, 1873, when the ship Adelheid was navigating the South China Sea. Crew members claimed to see this huge glowing circular object floating just below the water. And then, May 15, 1879, the crew of the HMS Vulture spotted 2 enormous Ferris wheel type objects spinning in opposite directions. Each spoke about 25 feet wide and spaced about 100 feet apart. On April 14, 1901, sailors aboard the SS Kilwa reported beams of light shining from an underwater disc-like object in the Persian Gulf. Then in 1943, a sailor named Matthew Mangle noticed a massive glowing disc keeping pace with his ship. Next on the list, we have the Rendlesham Forest incident. This one is very well documented. It took place in December of 1980 near the Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England. Late at night on December 26th of 1980, military personnel witnessed strange lights descending into the forest. At first they figured it was just a downed aircraft, a known one. What they found definitely seemed to be an aircraft, just not one they'd ever seen before. They came across what seemed to be a metallic object on the forest floor and would see strange lights in the sky. Some reported that the object they saw was triangular and emitted strange beams of light. One of the airmen even claimed to have touched the object. There are official documents that have been released about this story with full reports by the military personnel at the site, and what they described was pretty strange. Now, did they actually encounter an alien spacecraft? It's debatable, but what is clear is that they saw something out of the ordinary. And finally, we have one of the most mysterious and destructive crash landings of all time, the Tunguska event. On June 30th, 1908, a massive blast hit this remote area of Russia. The event is believed to have been caused by the airburst of a large object of some kind, most likely a comet or asteroid, entering Earth's atmosphere and exploding in mid-air. The explosion released an enormous amount of energy and flattened about 80 million trees in the area. Now, luckily this happened in a very remote area, so only trees were affected, but that also means there were very few witnesses. A handful of people did report seeing a bright bluish light in the sky though, accompanied by a series of thunderous noises. And there's always been this question as to whether this was caused by a space rock or something else. Apparently there was also mutated plant life after this impact, and Joseph Stalin is rumored to have even conducted secret experiments in the area, but that's more of an urban legend. With all that said though, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. You have to watch this video next. Warning, these events will make you believe in aliens. We found some real cases that will scare the bejesus out of you. What are you waiting for? Click the video now.